Welcome to Command HQ. It is Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. So we have another round of Chesa Boudin articles. So Chesa Boudin
Late night,
got
late night edition. Late night edition.
late night edition. Sweet. We're going to be mostly just kind of, being friendly and talking tonight. But it does look like Chesa Boudin got thoroughly annihilated in this recall election. So San Francisco voters have completely rejected his agenda, and we'll see if there's some sort of like real law enforcement, compassionate law enforcement versus what Chesa Boudin has been doing to San Francisco now for a while. And hopefully some of this crime and some of these problems get cleaned up. So there's that. We have monkeypox being raised to level 2 as a travel advisory. So you can see
They're
that,
saying you should wear a mask.
yeah, they're trying to get masks back for airports, for mass transit that's federally regulated,
Yo,
stuff like that.
mom, you gotta wear a mask tomorrow.
Get your masks ready to go. Even though masks, uh, uh, well, I can't talk about masks. I forgot about their COVID policies on these YouTube streams. So yeah, what are you doing, Agent X?
What am I doing? Oh, just hanging out, man. Watching the world. If you only knew how bad things really were. What?
Yeah, you were telling me about quantum computing and this the probability measurement, the slit experiment, and randomness in society in general, and I thought that was pretty fascinating. Because we've seen a lot of randomness, we've seen a lot of chaos in society, particularly the last 2 years.
Well, I think with quantum computing, I think that you're seeing the barriers to reality breaking down, right? And you're seeing it like exacerbated because for a long time physicists thought with the double slit experiment they that when you observe the particle that just the wave function collapsed, right? But now the leading theory is, and I guess they've ran tests that somewhat confirm this, is that um it's a the wave function collapses, but it's a probability and reality branches. And before the advent of quantum computing, we weren't observing particles, uh, and so we didn't really have reality branching out. And here you have quantum computer. I mean, you can log on right now and use an IBM quantum computer uh, with a few lines of code. Um, and I think what you're seeing here is reality, like the barriers of reality breaking down and introducing so much randomness with the branches that's why you see crazy stuff every day.
There's competing theories suggesting that one of the reasons we're seeing such an acceleration of technology, of society, of these political machinations is because of the fact that technology in general, not just software, I always assume it's software, but in general, is advancing at such a rate that the average person can't keep up with it. Um, and so, because there's such a divergence between, what people are used to and what society, what culture, and media, and institutions are now proliferating, particularly universities and scientific based federal institutions like the National Science Foundation and some of these national labs around the country where they're producing stuff like quantum computing. And then it's kind of like slowly being leaked out into society and it's being used um, in various areas to, um, you know, put us on a bleeding edge constantly. And that's what it feels like.
Well, I don't know. I don't really agree with that because if you look at our day to day technology, right, it hasn't really progressed. I mean, the last great advancement was the iPhone, which was nothing but an iteration of the Palm Pilot. So for the last, essentially 30 years, all we've seen is iterative changes in technology, and now we pretty much reached the limits of what a classical computer can do. I mean, even parallel, even running distributed classical computers, we've pretty much reached the limitations of what parallel and distributed computing can do. Um, so I think we're actually stagnant, and they're trying to push quantum computing, right, as a way to break that barrier, so so the predator class can get their wish of uploading their consciousness, reaching the singularity, um, and all the consequences that go with it. But I don't think anyone really. I mean, no one understands particle physics. No one understands what is happening with that wave function because it's very difficult to test. And I think the Harvard professor was talking about it, was that these physicists are going about it all wrong. They're trying to solve everything through mathematics instead of through practical testing. Um, when it comes to particle physics, but I don't think that people know what they're doing. These scientists know what they're doing with quantum computing, and I really do. I mean, if it's true that if the many worlds theory holds, I mean, I think all this chaos you're seeing introduced is because of quantum computing and the diverging realities. And like you and I talked about, like people we've known for years, they don't have the same personality that they just change day to day.
If you're out there listening and you've noticed similar things, we'd love to hear from you, whether that's a chat or a call in. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. But I have noticed that people are acting differently, but I thought that it was purely because of the pandemic. People, I feel like, are less social and then act out in certain ways because of a lack of socialization in certain contexts. Now, whether or not that is related to quantum computing as a conspiracy theory is a completely separate topic. But in terms of just general observations about people's behavior now versus maybe 3 or 4, even 5 years ago, there seems to be a stark and a major difference. So, with that, I do agree with you. But I think you're talking about, a major invention being an iPhone. What about the blockchain? The blockchain has had a tremendous impact on our current way of life right now, and that's a huge, huge advancement in society. But it
Yeah,
also
but
comes.
the blockchain is more of I think it's an iterative idea, right? It's not really a tangible technology. I'm talking about, things like, you went from the horse and buggy to the car. You went from um you had the industrial revolution where you started manufacturing steel. You could make washing machines and microwaves and things like that. And then you saw the computer age. What's the next age? Is it AR? Is it VR? Is it chips in your brain? Like I think we've stagnated there, and we should be. Really, the way we've advanced with technology, we should be on an exponential curve right now, and we've plateaued out because of the limitations on classical computers, on classical silicon.
I think it was in the 1970s or early 80s when people were predicting that nuclear fusion was just around the corner, and that has turned out to be completely false. In fact, it's been one of the biggest challenges to gain more energy than that is put into that experiment with creating nuclear fusion energy. And I think just recently they've, in the past, I don't know, 5 years, they've kind of done like um, a net zero. So they get about the same amount of energy back from what they're using to actually put into that experiment. More importantly, the cost of doing that with these small scale nuclear fusion reactors is so excessive that it's out of reach for literally everyone except for maybe 5 countries in the world: China, Russia, the United States, maybe Germany.
Well, I mean, that's another thing too. Is like we really haven't advanced in our energy production, which is the most important thing. Um, we were building nuclear plants in the '60s. We haven't come up with a new form of new form of energy technology. We haven't been able to harness anything. We're still burning stuff like we were doing 100 years ago. So
Your best friend,
it's
Bill Gates, is
your
backing some of
best
these
friend.
fusion technologies.
Yeah, I mean, you think we would have been able to harness something by now, but we're still burning the same stuff we were burning 100 years ago.
Yeah, and then you see the intersection of politics in reference to energy policy. And France um, and a number of other European countries have relied on nuclear energy, and it sustained them, kept their energy costs extremely low. And you see in this country, there's been kind of a moratorium on building new nuclear reactors because of, for example, in part, the 3 Mile Island disaster on the East Coast in the 80s, and some of the other concerns, the public concerns about what happens when you dispose of nuclear waste. But one of the biggest benefits of nuclear energy is that you have very little waste. So it becomes a problem of just finding a remote location to put that waste. And with some of this new space tech, you're thinking of like SpaceX, you think that they could just eject a lot of this waste, even if it's carbon waste, outside of our, area, uh, and put it out into space. But I'm kind of curious to know a little bit more about your thoughts on this many worlds theory. The Wikipedia here is many worlds interpretation, but it's also called the many worlds theory.
Yeah, well, if you look at it, I think something like 60 or 70% of particle physicists believe it now. Um, they used to just believe that the wave function collapsed and that was it. But now they believe that most particle physicists believe in the many worlds interpretation, including what's his name? He had him up there.
Bill Gates,
Um, no, not Bill Gates.
he's not a
I
particle
forgot his name.
physicist.
No, no, no. The guy who's on Joe Rogan all the time. Um. Anyways, yeah. No, I don't know. I don't think it's that simple, right? I don't think it's that simple. I When you think about it, it would seem to suggest that we're in a simulation, right? Um, it would seem to suggest some kind of intelligent design. Uh, but at the same time, these people they've these particle physicists they've stalled out in their research, for the past 40 years, and they're basically all just grasping at straws now. So, um, until they're really able to test it, come up with a way to test it, it's kind of hard to believe. But, at the same time, if that's really what's happening, people need to rethink quantum computers because you're literally branching new realities, creating new worlds. And what are the moral consequences of that?
How is something like this practically tested?
I don't know. Um, so Ari Loeb at Harvard, I mean, he was talking about, you know, there's there's no unified theory, right, of Einstein's gravity equations and particle physics, and he talked about a large part of that is because there's no these physicists have all been trying to solve it with math, and there's no they they haven't tried to come up with practical tests to try to test it. I don't know. I would have to think more about it, and that would be something for a very advanced uh, particle physicist to come up with. But he talked about how they were taking the absolute wrong approach, which I think is interesting because Ari Loeb is a he's a pretty smart dude, a little out there, but he's a pretty smart dude. Um, yeah, I mean, I just think that they've gone so far off course. And you know, one of the things I thought was interesting, I heard someone talking about, maybe the fact that there's not a unified theory is that the theory can't be reduced to mathematical equations. There's something other, there's some concepts that can't be reduced down to math that explains the bridge between Einstein's gravity equations and particle physics, which I thought was interesting.
The level of resource required to test many of these theories is also part and parcel to the concept of kind of like this military industrial complex intersection with science. So essentially, DARPA. And Avi Loeb is clearly gaining funding from the National Science Foundation, and he is producing research for the U.S. Space Command. And he's doing this to not only further his own research, but it becomes an issue then of who do you want to control this technology?
Yeah, so apparently he's tried to publish uh, several papers about the UAP phenomenon, and the government has shut him down, claiming he's posting classified information. So now he's started a project where um, he's trying to capture data through civilian resources. So I think there's some definite fuckery going on. Like he knows something's out there, and they keep shutting him down. I think he knows or has a hint of what these things really are, like the Tic Tac and some of these other sightings through the classified data, and they've shut him down. And so now he's trying to get all these cameras and telescopes pointed at the sky so he can get civilian imagery and publish what he knows. It's really interesting, and he's getting like millions of dollars in funding.
Yeah, if he is trying to go about it in the way that many other people go about it by only using public information, sort of like how we do things here, you wonder if this has any relation whatsoever to Charles Lieber was a professor at Harvard. He was chair and head of the chemistry department before he was indicted for process crimes because I think he was getting a ton of money from China. And many people have argued that the indictment coming from the Department of Justice versus Charles Lieber was to gag him and prevent him from speaking. And so, Avi Loeb is very aware of that. And because he understands that much of his research funding comes from the same players, he wants to play it very safe, very cautious, only used information that is thoroughly released to the public. And these Tic Tac videos that are kind of leaking out, and they've actually assembled a number of committees, I think in Congress, so not a number, but at least one, that is actually charged with investigating the sensor data coming that has detected um, like some of those flying saucers that F-16 pilots have seen and that no one has an explanation for. There's a ton of sensor data too from naval ships that have seen these, and it's alarming to say the least. But if Avi Loeb knows something about this, he can't open his mouth. He's got to be very cautious. But he can comment on some of the public stuff that's released, of course.
Yeah, I think that's why he's trying to create this public task force, right? So he can actually, so he can actually kind of backdoor reveal what he knows. To say, oh, it's public knowledge now. You know, we caught it on civilian telescopes. It's called the Galileo Project. You had it right there above right there. Projects. You missed it.
Galileo Project to Harvard.
Yeah, go back. Oh no,
This
no, no,
one?
you had it right. The Galileo, no, no, the Galileo projects at Harvard. Yeah,
Oh, so he's got a little video here. Should we play it?
yeah. Why not? It's gonna copyright strike.
Oh, is it going to be a copyright strike?
Nah,
Oh, play it. It's fair use.
this is some bullshit clip art, man. I figured he'd have better graphics.
Yeah. It's too bad he doesn't have us producing his little promos here. Or I should say me. I mean, look at how abstract and generalized he's describing this, capturing data across all spectrums, whatever that means. Visible wavelength of light, infrared wavelength, radio waves, sound waves. Well, radio waves are sound waves. Data processing. Okay, I mean, this is just kind of a ridiculous movie.
Yeah.
Okay. The Galileo Project.
Oh my god.
Project details. What are you laughing about?
Just laughing at some posts on your favorite message board.
Reddit.
Oh,
I was going to say what you're describing with quantum mechanics and quantum computing and the double slit theory and creating these infinite universes, multi-universes. I've noticed that people don't want to really work. There's a
dude, people don't
huge
want to work.
the major channel that I look at on Reddit, I think is called Anti-Work. People post some hilarious messages there. But here's the thing, even though I've noticed differences in other people, I haven't noticed that difference in myself. Like I
Yeah,
feel
because
like
you're
I'm the same
constant, man.
person.
You're constant.
And that's like that observer effect that Einstein talked about in the theory of relativity.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to think that, your essence branches, right? But that's what happens. I don't know. It's very difficult to wrap your head around. Dude, to talk about people not working, we drove by McDonald's today and had a big sign up. It was like, text, this number to apply for a job at McDonald's. Like, they're like, it's just signs up everywhere. Help wanted. Like, what's
They're
going
offering
on, man?
insane bonuses to do manual labor working in fast food restaurants, in restaurants in general, and gas stations. I've seen like sign-on bonus signs of like $1,000 at Taco Bell, and this is Taco Bell. I mean, 10 years ago, that would be like a sign-on bonus for kind of an entry-level job somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy. That, like, people don't want to work, and it just goes to show you it wasn't like the federal government, or the Federal Reserve. They're trying their best to kill demand, right? To um, through, raising interest rates, trying to cause these companies um, to kind of contract and slow their hiring and push wages down, because they thought that these rising wages were driving inflation, but really it was. I mean, I think it's pretty much come out now that it was supply chain breakdowns during the pandemic that caused the inflation. So now you're gonna have the bullwhip effect, and you're gonna have all these companies with massive amounts of inventory, and you're gonna see prices plummet on goods, I think, in the next 6 months. But
Oh, that
it is
reminds me.
interesting.
There was a story in the Wall Street Journal about Walmart, I think, having like a huge glut of inventory.
Yeah.
Reducing glut will take a couple quarters. They had invested something like $45 billion in excess inventory to get around some of these supply chain issues.
Hmm.
So people were kind of expecting these major sales to get rid of this backlog of inventory. Yeah, so that definitely plays a role somewhat in inflation.
Yeah, well, no,
And
you're gonna see. You see, there was all this high demand because people had a lot of disposable income through these enhanced UBI, or not UBI, enhanced unemployment, enhanced EBT. I mean, that was a big one. The EBT. I was at the gas station the other day, and um, this woman, I mean, like, total welfare queen, right? She goes up there, she has like beer, cigarettes, lottery tickets, and, like, I don't know, like some candy bars, and she literally pulls out like three EBT cards to pay for it all. It was crazy. I mean, they just giving people so much money, and there's so much money in the system, right? That there was so much demand that, and there was supply chain breakdown, so that didn't help. And you saw prices going up, up, up. But now you're seeing these massive inventories, and Walmart's got to clear that glut of inventory. So what's going to happen? Prices are going to plummet.
yeah, I think you touched on and identified something very critical in economy, um, in a measurement of inflation, and that is, and this is exactly what the uneducated economist does too. He looks at inventories, and if Walmart and Target have huge inventories of products, that's not only going to contribute to inflation, but you're going to see a huge drop eventually at some point in the price of those goods to match the excess inventory level, because there has to be some sort of equilibrium, right, until you reach some level of price elasticity, where then consumers are going to come in and actually start purchasing some of these items in excess inventory backlogs. And I have an actual story about the Dollar General store in my area. So they I've been to this Dollar General store, not a lot. I don't go in there frequently, but I've been there, I don't know, once or twice in the past 6 months, and they were like overflowing with inventory to such a point where you could barely actually walk down the aisles. And the state OSHA people came in and actually fined them, and it was a really hefty fine because there was so much inventory. So if you look at how you're identifying inflation, take a peek at how OSHA is investigating some of these retailers for violations of whatever variances that they have or that they investigate and stuff like that. Because if you're seeing OSHA come in and saying, well, like fire entrances or exits are blocked, um, entrances are blocked, and there's a risk of fire and violations. You're seeing a lot of inventory. You're seeing a lot of products not being sold. So that's another great way to investigate, inflation and the local market. Um, yeah, I'm gonna actually ask the uneducated economist next time he streams. I'm gonna pipe in and chat up when he talks about some of this stuff because I think that would be a great measurement tool. Anyways,
Yeah. Oh, I think you're right.
um, we are also seeing here in the upper Midwest huge investments in robot technology for fast food, Taco Bell. And they're trying to get rid of workers because the most unreliable workers in our economy typically are younger workers under 25. They're usually extremely busy with other things, going to school. Obviously, they're usually a little more immature and less consistent. And so, if you're looking at robot technologies, I would think from a common sense level, you would try and replace some of the inconsistent workers and some of the unreliable workers with robot technology first. Because white collar workers who are working for corporations and headquarters or regional offices are typically pretty reliable and consistent. And there's,
Yeah.
it's a lower wage trade off because there's going to be greater cost efficiencies if you're actually introducing robot technology for lower wage workers.
Yeah. Hey, dude, I just sent you a screenshot from a post on the message board. I think it's really interesting. It was touching on peak oil, which we talked about the other night.
Send me the link to this directly. Diesel production, so I can show it on the stream.
Hold
Okay,
on.
so the last part of this is society is collapsing extremely fast. Everything is in deficit.
Mm, okay, hold on. Scroll up to the top.
Here it is. Okay, let me pull it up. Oh, it's right here. Hungry Lion. I tend to be more optimistic. All of these doom and gloomers online are taking conspiracy theories about the economy way, way too far.
I don't know. It'd be interesting if we could find some actual data about peak oil. Um, Maybe that's something we should look into for one of the shows.
Hmm. Well, this this argument is prefaced on the production of oil. And that is exactly what this economy is transitioning off of. So you're going to see uh, a lot of issues in the economy as we're transitioning to other raw input sources of energy, and not oil, but wind, solar, um, and all the other
Dude, our
contingencies
stream is
surrounding
getting
it.
killed. No, I agree with that, but we should do a show on peak oil. It's just something I saw and thought I'd throw out there. But, dude, YouTube just killed our stream again.
Well, it is kind of getting late too. If you are watching, would really appreciate if you subscribe and like. Feel free to call in too briefly. We'll probably close this down in the next 10 or 15 minutes because it is getting late, but we'd love to hear any chats as well. Um, what do you think about the Proud Boys indictment?
I don't know. I don't know much about it. I mean, uh, there's it's never ending. The January 6th stuff is a bunch of uh, uh, it's
Oh,
just
wow. Our stream got tanked.
got nuked, man.
Wow. Totally got chat on. Well, we might as well just
Absolutely
briefly
got
talk
nuked.
about the Proud Boys indictment. So Enrique Tario has been charged with a number of lesser crimes connected to. Wow, our stream did get chat on. What were we talking about that caused our stream to get chat on? Anyways,
Peak oil,
um,
man.
peak oil. We'll mark that in our notes. Tario,
Maybe we should shut this down and just talk about it tomorrow.
yeah, it's actually a better idea. Okay,
You got almost 50 new subscribers today, man.
yeah. Do you have anything else to say before we shut the stream down?
No, I'm
Okay.
good.
All right, we'll see you guys either later this week or tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow, depending on our schedules. Let's see, tomorrow's Wednesday. Thursday is a big day. There's going to be this prime time January 6th committee event. They're actually trying to make this into some sort of like Hollywood production. I was going to touch on Rob Reiner's Twitter, where, I mean, they're calling for all kinds of criminal charges against people in government. We're turning into a third world country. I don't think we're being imploded. I think we're just being turned into a third world country, and it's starting from a political attack vector. Um, yeah, so Thursday will definitely be streaming. We have to for that to counter a lot of the fake stories that come out of it. But yeah, we'll see you tomorrow probably, and if not Thursday. And hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye.